you're struggling at fighting against the tyranny of the walking toasters, or finding it annoying to go up against washing machines that have developed sentiency, then this video is right for you. Because today I'm going to be going over 3 really strong builds that you can use against the Automatons in Helldivers 2. The bots are a cold and emotionless faction of steel, oil, and stand against everything that democracy stands for, and today I'm going to help you take them out a little bit better. Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and if you enjoy this kind of content and want to see more Helldivers 2 videos, or just more videos in general, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss another upload. Now let's get into the builds. So the first build I have for you today is one that is incredibly effective and just kind of covers all the general bases of how to fight the bots, and I have affectionately called it the Space Marine build because this build is themed and inspired off of the Space Marines from Warhammer 40k. And the reason I say that is because the primary weapon and centerpiece of this entire build for the most part is the Jar 5 Dominator, a powerful special weapon that is inspired and based heavily on the bolt rifles from the Warhammer series. The Dominator is an incredibly strong weapon, especially against the bots. Bots predominantly have a lot of medium armor, and the Dominator handles that very well. As I said, it's the primary weapon for this build and the main bread and butter tool for which we use to cut through chaff, as well as those slightly more medium armor threats. I'm looking at you, Devastators. And even with precise shots, you can take out bigger and stronger threats very easily as well. Complement the Dominator. For secondary weapons, I'm running the Senator Revolver just to give us a pocket weapon to deal with heavy armor. And for throwable weapons, I'm running the Thermite Grenades because it is just a good utility tool to use against bot fabricators, tanks, factory striders, and basically any big major thing that we need taken off the field quickly. And just to save time in the future, for the other builds I'm going to be talking about in this video, I'm going to be using the same secondary and throwable with the Senator and the Thermite Grenades, so I'm not going to mention them in the further build, but if you did want to adjust these, you are more than welcome to do that. Now, talking about armor for this particular build, there are a couple of different options that you have. The main things that are going to be hindering us when using the Dominator are its horrible ergonomics and its limited ammo capacity. So there are a couple different ways that you can circumvent this. If you want to improve the handling and ergonomics of this particular weapon, you could go with Peak Physique to make it just a little bit more snappy. This is great if you are somebody who wants to focus more on precision shots and being able to hit the enemies where it hurts the most. But for me, for this particular build, I am going instead with Siege Ready, and that's for a couple of reasons. First, the extra reload speed for a primary weapon can help out a lot because the Dominator has a notoriously slow reload, especially if you do it off of a completely empty magazine. So this just kind of helps lower that downtime a little bit. Secondly, the extra ammo capacity for all of our weapons is incredibly nice because it gives us a few extra mags that we can use to dump into the enemies. And the other reason why I'm running Siege Ready is because it coalesces very well with one of the stratagems we are running for this build, which is the Laser Cannon. This thing is probably one of the best stratagems to use against the bots ever since it got updated, and is one of the pinnacle tools for taking out Hulks and armored striders, as well as just being able to cut through large groups of enemies as well. And because it is a support weapon that does not use a backpack, it is able to benefit from Siege Ready and get an extra battery just in case you do happen to overheat, although we of course want to avoid that as much as we can, but there are certain circumstances where you just can't. And the combination of the Dominator plus the Laser Cannon with Siege Ready definitely helps us handle most of what the bots have to throw at us, with the exception of things like tanks and factory striders unless you get really good positions. Then going over the rest of the stratagems we're running for this build, for a backpack item, we're actually using the Portable Hell Bomb. Now, the Portable Hell Bomb might seem a little bit odd and a bit flashy, but for bots specifically, the Portable Hell Bomb is incredibly useful because it helps you just sort of take care of a large number of secondary objectives that you can come across when fighting the bots. Stratagem jammers, detector towers, gunship factories, mortar emplacements, anti-air stations, and even just small to medium bot encampments this thing can take out by itself. Plus, it gives you the ability to do some really cool action movie hero stuff where you can sacrifice yourself for the greater good and take out a lot of enemies in the process, which is always fun. Next, alongside everything, we're also bringing the Rocket Sentry. This is probably one of the best sentry guns in the entire game, at least in my personal opinion, especially when you're up against the bots, because it is just able to handle so many things, from tanks to factory striders to Hulks to gunships to dropships. It can handle just about anything you need, so it just gives us a little bit more utility and extra firepower when we do need it. And then the last pick is kind of a flex spot. It's up to you what you want to bring. For me, I decided to keep it very simple and run just the Eagle Airstrike, because it's a nice general purpose sort of Swiss Army knife of stratagems. It's able to take out camps, groups of enemies, heavily armored enemies, and it is just a really fun stratagem to use. But you could swap this out for anything you want, and this can kind of be a mission dependent stratagem. If you're fighting a lot more of the bigger bases, you could go with something like the Orbital Laser or the Walking Barrage, or if you just want to try to take out as many smaller things as possible, you could go with the Cluster Bomb or the Napalm Barrage. This slot is kind of up to you. And like I said, the main focus around this particular build is it is meant to be just sort of a general use effective build that can handle just about everything that the bots can throw at you in some capacity or another. Again, you're going to be using the Dominator to cut through most of the chaff and also some of the more persistent enemies such as the Devastators, using your laser cannon to take out the tougher threats like the Hulks and the Armored Striders, and then with a combination of your thermite grenades, the rocket sentry, and whatever else you want to bring, the tanks, the factory striders, and the bigger threats are going to drop very easily. Next, moving over to the second build we have, this one admittedly is a little bit more of a meme-focused build. If you are familiar with this series, I like to do kind of two serious-ish builds that are actually meant to be effective, and one that's kind of meant to be more of a meme, but in certain cases can actually be pretty good, and this is what we have here. This is what I have affectionately called the Gorilla Gunner build, and it revolves around probably one of the most misunderstood weapons and stratagems in the entire game, the heavy machine gun. The heavy machine gun has a love-hate relationship with a lot of players, myself included, because while it is incredibly powerful and is able to do a lot of damage, its handling is, well, less than ideal. It is a weapon that you definitely have to build around, but once you do, it is incredibly effective, and that is what this build hopes to achieve. Quickly go over what I'm using outside of stratagems just to get that out of the way. For weapons, you kind of just need something that can handle with medium armor threats relatively easily, so I'm going with the Hulk shotgun, as especially against the bots, it is incredibly useful. Having the flechette rounds for dealing with pretty much anything the bots have, and then having the stun rounds to be able to slow down approaching enemies can be very useful, but really you can use essentially whatever you want for your primary. And again, remember my secondary is going to be the Senator and my throwable is the Thermites. Talking about armor, again, you have a couple different options with this particular build. You could go with Siege Ready again because the heavy machine gun does not use any backpack, so you would be able to benefit from the extra ammo. But for me, especially since the ergonomics with the heavy machine gun are even worse than the Dominator, I decided to go with Peak Physique for this particular build. And the reason why is because the extra weapon handling and less drag helps so much, especially when using this particular weapon. It allows you to be a lot more snappy with going in between targets, which helps a lot when you're trying to take out multiple different enemies. Now, you could also opt for something like Fortified or Engineering Kit to help with the reduced recoil, since especially if you are not using both of those, I would highly recommend only really laying on the trigger with the heavy machine gun when you are either crouching or prone, because if you're trying to stand up or move around with this thing, it is going to kick like a pissed off warthog, and it is going to make it really hard for you to aim. But even without those two armor passives, if you do just make sure you are constantly crouched when using this thing and have good trigger discipline, you can actually control the weapon decently well, especially if you decide to go with the lower rate of fire, which I personally didn't do, but that can also help out a lot in terms of controlling the weapon. And then talking about the other stratagems we're using for this build, for our backpack, we are running the supply pack. This is very good, especially when ran with the heavy machine gun, because it just allows you to stay topped off for ammo, as well as your grenades and stims, so you basically never really have to worry too much about being either out of ammo or out of resources. Then we're also running the rocket sentry similar to the last build, because again, it is just generally very useful against the bots. And then I'm running the strafing run just for some general purpose utility and taking out a more smaller chaff. But again, this could kind of be more of a flex pick, and I would say maybe something like the orbital laser or the orbital rail cannon to help take out singular threats might not be a bad choice. And the main premise with this build, like I said, is you are basically just a huge heavy gunner. You are going to be using the heavy machine gun like your primary and just kind of laying into the large groups of enemies that are going to be coming towards you, planting your feet and holding down the trigger while you cut through literally just about everything. The heavy machine gun, since it has heavy armor pen, can go through anything the bots have aside from tanks and factory striders, again, unless you have really good positioning. So this thing will be able to cut through pretty much whatever you want. Again, like I said in the beginning, this is more kind of a meme sort of thematic based build. It isn't meant to be the most effective thing in the world, but it is still pretty fun if you want to give it a try. Then the final build we have, which is the build that I personally use a lot when I'm going up against the bots, is what I like to call the bot assassin build. This one is very effective in most cases and is very general purpose and has a lot of different ways that you can handle just about anything the bots can throw at you. Talking about the weapon options, you have a couple different choices and you really can use just about anything with medium armor penetration, but for this build, I decided to go with the Plasm 1 Scorcher, especially since it's available to all players. Scorcher is really good against the bots. Not only does it have medium armor penetration, but the fact that it is explosive and has a little bit of blast radius around its point of impact is really good for dealing with things like Devastators or just tightly packed groups of enemies. Although the ammo conservation for this weapon is not the best, it is still incredibly useful and will be able to take out far more enemies than you might expect. Then talking about armor, for this particular build, I am running the simple Fortified passive because against the bots specifically, this is just a really good armor passive to run. The explosive resistance is king when going up against bots since they have so many different rockets, so many different explosives. You can tank things that would otherwise kill somebody else who's not running fortified, and the recoil reduction is not a bad little addition to have on top of it. Then going over stratagems for our support weapon, we are running the anti-material rifle. This is, in my opinion, one of the best tools for taking out bots in general because it just has an insane amount of range. The fact that it has heavy armor pen means it can take out things like Hulks and Striders very easily, and it's just general ease of use make it very effective when going up against the bots. You can pick things off from a distance before they even have a chance to get to you, and if you're good with your shots, which for me that's questionable, you can take things out with record speed. To help complement it, we are also running the shield generator backpack. This is still one of the more general purpose good stratagems. Although it's gotten tweaked since the game first came out, this is still one of the best stratagems just for sheer raw durability. If you just want to make it harder for you to die, this is one of the best things in the entire game. And again, when paired up with fortified, it just makes you practically unkillable against the bots unless you're really unlucky. Then to round things out, we are using the orbital rail cannon shot to deal with problematic threats very quickly. This is our pocket get the big thing off of the battlefield button. With a decent cooldown, this thing is able to get Hulks, tanks, cannons, and even factory striders if you get a couple of hits in. It's able to take all of these things off the field in an instant. And then lastly, again, I am running the Eagle Airstrike, again for just general purpose utility. It's able to take out fabricators, small bases, patrolling groups of enemies, or even just tightly packed groups of enemies. And again, it is just one of the best Swiss Army knife stratagems in the entire game. And similar to the first build, this build is supposed to be able to just sort of handle whatever you need, albeit while the first build was a little bit more close to mid-range, this is definitely more of a mid to long-range focused build, obviously since we are running the anti-material rifle, but it does allow you to take out essentially everything the bots can throw at you in some way, shape, or form. And there you have 3 effective builds for the Automatons and Helldivers 2. I do hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys want to see more Helldivers 2 content in the future, let me know down in the comments and let me know what type of builds you guys like to have against the Automatons. And as always, if you found this video informative and entertaining, please be sure to give it a like and consider subscribing today, as it really helps me out a lot. For Super Earth Helldivers, I will see you in the next video.